The Lord Mayor of London, Michael Mbele, is visiting South Africa to participate in business sessions focusing on South Africa's government's infrastructure rollout. He's also visiting other countries like Nigeria and Angola, just looking at investment prospects post-credit crisis. He spoke to us earlier on. Okay, you're Lord Mayor in year 2011, at a time when we've seen financial markets in a state of flux, sluggish growth in developed economies. What sort of issues are going to define your tenure as Lord Mayor?
In my year, I'll travel to 23 countries, wearing the banner of commercial diplomacy, which is our Prime Minister's really strategy for improving commercial opportunities for the United Kingdom.
Now, obviously, we're dealing with a situation where the UK economy is struggling to retain growth, having shrunk by 4%, and to a large extent, it's the banks that are blamed for the financial turmoil we've seen pre-recession, during the recession, and today. How do you respond to that?
Well, financial services in Britain is still very important. We're about still 10% of our GDP. We contribute 124 billion to the economy of the United Kingdom per annum. And I keep reminding our Chancellor of the Exchequer that we contribute 54 billion every year of taxes. So we are extremely important. And really it's in the interests of the United Kingdom and the government to make sure that the city, in its broadest sense, can operate and create jobs and prosperity for the whole nation.
The big dilemma is that the banks account for less than 5% of GDP, and yet collectively the industry is blamed for 35% of the problems that unfolded during the credit crisis. So there's a lot of work that's needed in terms of restoring confidence. How are you going to address those?
Well, I think the important thing is, and I think that the government realises, is that the city, and the city is more than just banks, banks, insurance, financial services generally, is part of the solution to creating jobs. We have to go forward looking forward. We can't go forward looking back. There were mistakes made in 2008 during the credit crisis, but we've learnt the lessons of those mistakes, and I think we are stronger for it. One of the great experiences in the world, and we've been going for many centuries, is to build our confidence and build our trade going forward. So I'm very confident that we're in a very good place, having come from a very challenging environment.
Also in the context of restoring confidence in financial services, are the current reports about investigations into libel infractions and maladministration on the currency side, and the extent to which banks were complicit in manipulating rates to reduce borrowing costs? UK banks have been named alongside American banks. Whatever the outcome of these investigations, there's still a lot of work that's needed in terms of restoring confidence in the integrity of the British financial services sector. How are you going to address those issues in the work that you do?
In fact, restoring confidence is very much part of my role. Trust, confidence, and the ethics of business. And that is, I would say, probably my first priority. Because with confidence comes better trade. But we have to make sure that happens across the whole G20 and the whole world. My word is my bond. That is what the city has been so famous for. What we're not scared of is more regulation, reformed regulation. And we found that in 2008, regulation wasn't really man enough for the sophistication of many of the products, where the poachers were smarter than the gamekeepers. So we're restructuring our regulation, and we are stronger for the experiences that we learnt in 2008.
Now, obviously, as a result of the credit crisis and sluggish growth that we're seeing today, many investors looking for yield have started moving their investments into emerging markets, particularly Asia, and some into Africa. Is that a problem for you?
What we're interested in the size of the overall global pie. And as long as our share remains the same and the pie gets bigger, then I think that's the most and the best that we can do. We have very strong, unique selling points in the City of London. We're right in the middle of the time zone, and we're very attractive in terms of our contract law, our transparency, predictability. So we're very clear that what we need to do to be competitive. But what we are finding is that the whole business model for doing business today is changing. Cheap credit isn't coming from the East anymore, that you alluded to. China is using that credit to stimulate consumption in their market. The Middle East is using their surpluses to diversify away from oil and to fund some of the issues for the Arab Spring. Japan, that used to fund a lot of surpluses, are using money to reconstruct after their tsunami. And Germany is funding some of the deficits that we're finding in southern Europe. So we're having to look at a different model, and we're having to work a lot harder to make sure that we attain the growth and realise the potential that we have in the city.
Now, within the continuum of credit and growth internationally, where does Africa feature?
Africa is not only today's market, but tomorrow's market as well. In Africa, over the next probably 30 years, we're going to have 750 million people in cities and in the middle class. They are going to be major consumers of the future. And our challenge is to make sure that we position ourselves not only to help them to create that step change in Africa, but to also trade better with Africa.
I think a lot of people who are looking at investment opportunities in Africa are focused on the infrastructure and particularly the energy story, and as a result oil producing countries have become more fashionable at the moment, where a lot of interested investors are going. That almost defines your trip as well, if I may dare say.
Well, it does indeed. I mean, infrastructure is absolutely key. We have a very simple formula that we worked out in the United Kingdom, that £1 spent in infrastructure generates £2.84 back into the economy through the supply chain, creating jobs, capacity, training. And that is, so infrastructure actually pays for itself. I was reading about the iron ore industry in South Africa, where it costs 3 times as much to transport the ore to market than it does to actually excavate it from open cast mining. So infrastructure is hugely important.
Angola is a curious choice, and some would argue actually it is about oil that you're here today. How do you respond to the skeptics?
Well, we're not, we're not looking for oil, we're looking for opportunities. I mean, one of the great things about the United Kingdom is that we are collectors of best practice across a whole variety of disciplines. And my agenda is about sharing knowledge, sharing opportunity, and win-win situations. We found that in Luanda, and I hope to discover that in South Africa, Kenya and Nigeria as well.
Going back to the future and the challenges that the international financial system faces, there's obviously the situation of sovereign debt issues in Europe, and the fact that the Europeans are being called on to consider Eurobonds in order to stabilize the financial sector there, the reticence to do it, and what some are saying could be the end of the euro in the next few years. Does that have any bearing on the United Kingdom?
The concern for the United, we're not part of the Eurozone, as you know. I mean, the concern for the United Kingdom is more about creating an environment where we've got predictability and certainty. Uncertainty in the euro is not helpful for business, and I'm a business ambassador. So one of my objectives is to see how we can generate more certainty. If there was a solution, and I'm not sure whether Eurobonds will be the solution, but something needs to happen because there is so much uncertainty at the moment. There was uncertainty in the States about the debt ceiling, and uncertainty, as you quite rightly point out, about the southern European states and their ability to service their debt. But we need to get certainty and predictability because business thrives where there is that, and transparency, of course.
And then going into year 2012, obviously it's an auspicious and an exciting period because it's the London Olympics in 2012. But Britain's just come out of the shocking civic unrest we've seen recently. Matching those two issues, is London a very tough sell at the moment?
Well, I'm very proud of what we've done for the Olympics. We're 1 year ahead of schedule on the Olympic Park. All of our infrastructure is in place. We only have one challenge as far as the Olympics is concerned, and that's to win some medals. The disturbances that you refer to, I'm convinced that they're a one-off. I'm Chief Magistrate of the City of London, and we will be pursuing all those who acted criminally. But I don't believe this will be a phenomena that will repeat it.
Part of the work that you do is for charity and social advocacy. Tell us about some of the more philanthropic work that you do outside of financial services.
One of the roles of the Lord Mayor is about philanthropy. What the Lord Mayor does is he sets up an appeal every year. My appeal, with my surname Mbele, is called Bare Necessities, and it's really aimed at providing the bare necessities for disadvantaged children, and also disaster relief, making sure that disaster relief is more effective. So we're working in East Africa and Sudan and Somalia. We worked in Pakistan. As far as the UK is concerned, we're dealing a lot with children who don't have the advantage of a good education, especially primary school. So I'm hoping to raise the most amount in my year to make sure that we make the most impact for those who are disadvantaged in our society.